Hey, and welcome to the NPC Sports Podcast. We've had a great show so far. Too bad we didn't record any of it. But Sean McGuire, welcome to our humble abode. I'm
Yeah,
joined as usual by Mike Cole. My name is Ben. How's everything going, Sean?
I'm good. I'm staying busy, enjoying the summer, staying busy.
Excellent. Yeah, we definitely have not spoken for 20 minutes prior to
Yeah.
streaming. We definitely didn't express a lot of unfiltered ideas and opinions that we will probably not share, at least by name, on this episode. But as always, to familiarize Sean, this is a sports podcast with the specific kind of point of view and thrust of the sports media perspective. So we're going to talk about a lot of standard, sports podcast, radio type stuff. Going to really hit the Red Sox. Obviously, Patriots training camp began this week, and then we'll finish up with our behind the keyboard, and that's where I hope that you'll have some great insight for us. But to start off, Red Sox came into the All-Star break hot, came out of it not as hot, dropped four of their first six, thanks to an extra inning win over the Phillies on Wednesday night. Mike, you alluded to something last week coming out of the All-Star break saying that we really don't know what this Red Sox team is, and we will find out once they start playing some tough competition. They played the Cubs and the Phillies, and I think it went predictably. I think it was not an abject disaster. They didn't get swept, but it was obvious that they were facing a different level of competition that they have faced. They're facing not just the National League, which is stronger overall, but a couple of the premier contenders in the National League. Excuse me, and going 1-3 against both of them is predictable. What did you see coming out, and what do you think that means moving forward with the trade deadline a week from today?
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for Jesus Lazardo throwing up all over himself on Wednesday night, like my rant, whatever you want to call it, take last week would have aged even better because, like they have. I think you're being kind to them. I just
Yeah.
like they. I don't want to get carried away and say like they don't belong in the same field as these teams because I think that's probably overstating it a little bit. But like they aren't in the same class. Like I think that's pretty abundantly clear. Um, and so yeah, it played out kind of the way I expected. The pitching has been better for a while now, and I think that more or less held up for the last two series. But the offense and like this is the thing is like Alex Cora coming out and spiking the football a week and a half ago or whatever, being like, we're more balanced, we're making more contact. Like, just wait till we get Masataka Yoshida back in this mix as a way of being like, we don't need Rafael Devers. The biggest issue, especially in Chicago, was the offense, and that really, I mean, that carried through outside of Lizardo self imploding. I mean, they had well, after the Romy Gonzalez grand slam on Wednesday night, they had 6 runs on 2 hits. Like it still wasn't very good, wasn't very impressive. The offense has been a major issue, and like I don't think that's getting a whole lot better because you have guys who are not as good as maybe they've played. Like Romy Gonzalez is a perfect example of that. Narvaez continues to, maybe he just is good. I don't know. But like those are the types of guys that I look at, and it's like once the pitching and the level of competition gets better, those are the guys who are going to get exposed more than anything else. And that's coincided with a little bit of a dip for guys like Roman Anthony or Marcelo Meyer. And like both of them are showing signs of being great Major League Baseball players in the long run. But like that's the thing is when you start leaning on, unstable chair legs, like eventually the chair is going to fall over. And so I don't think it's totally fallen over yet, but it's played out kind of the way I expected. What's interesting is now they've got like the Dodgers coming up. I think they've got the Yankees too. Like that looked a lot tougher 6 weeks ago, but still, I could totally see them being the get right for both of those clubs because I think that's the sort of you know competition that a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees would kind of look toward to get right. So, um, they have the Mets coming up too soon?
They were
the Astros too.
They were the get right
Yeah.
for the Cubs and the Phillies too. Because
Yeah,
that
right,
was one of the
exactly,
things at
right.
the All-Star break. Both those teams, it was like, they've kind of faltered the last couple, and then they came out and they each took 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox, and now they're right back.
Like I know with like
yeah.
the Dodgers, like the sample size is getting increasingly big, and that's, maybe they just aren't as good as we expected them to be, but that's still a pretty talented bunch. Like Ohtani's gonna win them at least one of those games just by, I know he got moved back in the rotation, so a bit of a win for the Red Sox in that regard. But like, yeah, they are a middling team that is taking advantage of shit and taking advantage of playing in the American League. And like, I just think looking ahead to the trade deadline, it would take some massive balls to be like, I know what we're looking at here, and it looks like we're closer than we are, but we're not, and we're gonna make a tough decision here, and we'll wear it. Like, we stink. We admit that we should have been better this year. We didn't play out the way we wanted it to, but look what we've got coming. And that would take a lot of gumption, because I think people like myself are sick of hearing wait till next year in like a non-traditional sense. That's what's annoying. But like, at least they could rest on being like, well, we have a good young core that we're building around here. You have to extend Bregman if that's going to be the case. But yeah, like augmenting this core with controlled players who are going to be better 2 years from now than they are now, maybe that's the way to go. I just don't know which direction they go now, because now you're almost back at like, what was it 2022, the Bloom one, where it's like, are you half in, half out? And like, again, this is another thing I mentioned last week. Breslow insisting for like 3 weeks that they're going to buy after trading away his best player, only to see his team come out and flop after the All-Star break, and now they are in 500 purgatory, in the mix for a third wild card just to get their doors knocked in by somebody else. They've kind of backed themselves into a weird spot, and I'm not entirely sure what the best route out is. So,
Sean.
Yeah, I would say I'm as pessimistic as Mike. I think the fact that you need to, I mean, they go 2-4. They have to win the series finale of each of them to avoid the sweep. Yet last night, Wednesday night, was maybe their most dramatic win of the season. So you need to have that go your way as well. And it feels like with that, and then, we haven't really talked about the Marcelo Mayer injury for what that is going to be.
yeah.
Who knows? But, that adds to the context. It certainly adds to the context of, the trade deadline and everything as well. And then I think it was, who was it? I can't remember who had the report, but essentially the report was that there's no large scale, I think was the quote, there's no large scale, it might have been Passan actually, that there was no large scale deadline moves expected. And I just think like those kind of coming out once that adds to the pessimism.
I want to put a pin in that. I'll let you respond, Ben, and give your take. But like the passing thing, I'm gonna pull that up. There was something in there where they're like, basically the Red Sox are like, we're smarter than everybody else, and if the value's not there, the value's not there. So at some point that gets old. But Ben, I don't know if you want to reply where they're at right now or whatever.
No, I think to both your guys' points, I don't know if it's the Red Sox front office or fandom, but they choose the weirdest like golden elephants, the weirdest sacred cows. Like they're talking about like they want to get young, controllable assets, but not give up the pieces that the other team would accept, and the pieces that like Jarren Duran. To me, like a clear-thinking person says, absolutely, I trade Jarren Duran in a heartbeat for something I need more than a 29-year-old okay left fielder. But there's this like, no, you can't trade Jarren Duran. Absolutely, you should be able to trade Jarren Duran. Why is he a piece that is all of a sudden we can't move this guy to get something we need more? A very replaceable player.
If you think you're good and are going to contend this year, he should not be on the team. Like, because he's your best trade chip, and therefore he should be able to get you something that can help you this year and beyond. Like the Dylan Cease stuff with San Diego. They shouldn't be in the rental market. That's my opinion at least. It's like I don't think they need a rental, but like Jarren Duran can get you something. Because here's the thing. If you don't trade Jarren Duran, then A, it's a white flag, and I'm almost okay with that. Like, again, for me, a lot of it comes back to messaging. So that's going to be a hill I die on. That's my issue, whatever. If you keep him, fine. You want to trade in the offseason, fine. But you have to do, like, that this logjam is not going to magically solve itself in November, December, or January. You're going to have to make a tough decision at some point. So if there's a deal out there that makes at least some sense, go for it. If you think you're that good, go for it now. And maybe you don't get as much value as you would if you waited till the offseason. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what's out there. I'm not entirely sure what the market looks like. So maybe I'm speaking out of my ass. But like, again, if you don't see him here for the long term, you might as well do it now and lean into this idea that you think you're good this year and try to make a run at it. It's probably not the direction I would go in terms of like trying to build for the 2025 playoffs, but it's not the craziest thing either. So I just think there's a lot of mixed messaging. I know I'm kind of mixing my messaging but like it's all reacting to where they're going. And it's just, I don't know where they're going.
I think like what you said too, Mike, about, how they kind of backed themselves into the corner with what they said for the last 3 weeks. I think that has to play a pretty large role in this. And so I think like they're still, they've started the second half, like post All-Star break, like crap. But I still think because of the messaging that they had ahead of time that they do have to do something. And I don't think like you can say for weeks and weeks that, yes, we're going to make additions and we're going to make acquisitions and, we really want impactful pitching and you can't say all this stuff and then just sit on your hands because you started the season, because you started the post All-Star break 2-4 and maybe after this Dodger series, something closer to 3-6 or 2-7 even. But I think because of that, like, and because of what you said about like the fan aspect of things and, that outlook, I kind of think they still have to buy, maybe they don't buy as much or, they don't, spend as much or do what it takes. And that's not the right way to go about it either. Right. But I think, kind of they need to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be like grumpy old man hollering about the expanded playoffs for consecutive weeks because I don't like hate the extra wild cards. But, sort of like I mentioned how the additional wild cards have changed the approach to the trade deadline. I feel like it's made things just naturally conflict between the marketing aspect of a team like the Red Sox versus the baseball arm of the Red Sox because they're in possession of a wild card spot right now. Mm-hmm, and that makes it really tough because from a PR standpoint, you're trying to sell to fans, our team is in the race, come see them, buy tickets, buy concessions. That's its own nuclear football right there. But then from a baseball standpoint, like it's really probably not the best thing to try to buy from a baseball perspective. So you have these kind of competing things now where if it was once upon a time and they were 3 games out of a playoff of the wild card spot with 4 teams ahead of them, you would be, they're absolutely selling, and that's the best for them from a baseball standpoint for the next 3-4 years. But now you can't really do that when you're in possession of a playoff spot as of this moment.
Well, that's why somebody's got to get their shit together over there. Again, like Sean, you mentioned, they've been the thing. It's not just the last 6 weeks. I've made this point a bunch, so I hate going back to it. But it's the last 10 months. Sam Kennedy said after the season ended last year, or maybe it was more of an off-season thing. I don't know. But like, they're like, we're building this thing up, and in 2025, our goal is to win 90 to 95 games and compete for the division. Well, they're on I forget what it is, like an 85 win pace right now. They're kind of sort of in the division, but it's like, yeah, man, you said, 8 months ago that you were going to try to go for it this year, and then the head of the baseball operations 6 weeks ago said that we're going to keep buying, and nothing has changed since then. And if anything, your hope is inflated by beating the tar out of historically bad baseball teams. So it's like they almost have to, but again, I just don't think that's the best course of action. And that probably comes off as me speaking out of both sides of my mouth because like the last thing I want to do is hear another press conference on October 5th that's like, we think we're really close and this is a great core and you're seeing the tremendous strides that Roman Anthony has made this year, and we're very excited to have a full season of those guys. And Sedon Rafaela is the new Mookie Betts, and it's just like I can already hear that playing in my head. So, but like, I guess the only thing that would make me happy, and this is a very specific thing, is if they sell at the deadline because they have incredible pieces in a seller's market, and then they come out and say, we just didn't do enough this year and we were wrong, and we admit that. And I just don't think that's going to happen because, to your point, Ben, that goes against kind of both of these pillars. So it's like, I don't think they put themselves in that position. So.
Yeah, I don't think they admit those faults either. But
which is why I think they're just gonna. I think they soft buy at the deadline. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think too. And it's like it's kind of like a weird, because I mean, if you buy rentals and things too, like that's only helping you this year. Like a Ryan O'Hearn or something, like that's only helping you this year, but it's also cheap. So because it's only helping you this year, so like that's why I feel like it will be like kind of that threading the needle, because then they can still say that they bought, but they didn't give up a ton, and that's just kind of how they go about it.
I think that's like exactly the type of players that they like. I mean, Rich Hill pitched pretty well in his first Royals appearance. I mean, 1 strikeout, but 5 innings, 6 hits, 1 run. Like that was the thing last year, right? Is they got Rich Hill. It's like, all right,
yep.
Dick Mountain is not really moving the thing here. So
can you imagine having a Dick Fitz and a Dick Hill in the same rotation? That's a lot of dicks.
But like I think that's probably that type. O'Hearn's a perfect example, I think, from the other side of that, where I don't think that costs you a ton. You could probably trade your 11th best prospect for whatever, and be like, remember when Ryan O'Hearn was a Red Sox? Like that's
Red Sox legend.
So it's like Tony Clark.
So sticking with the Red Sox, but it's specifically with the catching, because I have kind of 2 catching takes. One was, we've known for a while this is a mediocre team. The last couple days, though, and it specifically relates to the catching position, was really kind of the first time that I felt that not only was this a mediocre team, it kind of has like a loser mentality to it. And I'm referring to the catcher's interference calls, which directly led to or contributed to the 2 losses in Philly. Not the transgressions themselves, but the players' reaction to them. Even a lot of the fans, I thought, too, blaming the rules or the umpire or whoever for making this call, for saying that the Phillies batter was gaming the system, or they didn't know this about a play at home. They have to look at that rule. And I was like, that's when it becomes, this is not a winning mentality. That is, if there's something wrong with the rule, why are you the first team in 50 years to have a walk-off catcher's interference? Everyone has been able to avoid this for half a century except for you, but it's the rule book's fault. It's the umpire's fault for applying that. And that those 2 kind of things are kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, how many fingers can you point when you're the person who doesn't just stay behind the plate to catch a pitch?
I think you're slightly overstating baseball is weird. Like, it's a statistical anomaly. Like, a walk-off on a catcher's interference, I get why that hasn't happened in 50 years. I don't think that's a direct reflection of the baseball IQ of the players involved. But I will say, to take your point a different direction, to get catcher's interference 2 nights in a row is maybe more telling. And the one on the walk-off was kind of whatever. It's, I get, there's a lot of dumb rules in baseball. It is what it is. I think the Tuesday night one was a more telling transgression on the Red Sox part, because like that starts with the pitcher, right? So like clearly Harper saw something that made him think that Fitz wasn't getting to the plate quick enough and or wasn't checking him. And that's like day 1 stuff in terms of controlling the running game. If you're going to I guess there's not multiple days devoted to pitching out of the windup with a guy on third base, but it's, if you're going to go out of the windup with a guy on third base, you got to check in on him. And I'm guessing he wasn't. Like, it could be as simple as like looking at him with your eyes, because like when you come, I don't want to get too granular, but like you lift you go back, go in your windup, lift your leg, and like if you see him out of the corner of your eye, or you're checking him every time before you kind of take the before you take your rocker step, you'll know if he's a little bit farther out, and it'll allow you in the middle of your windup to kind of change direction and basically abort and get the ball to the catcher faster so he can catch it and tag him without having to come out in front. But because Harper got such a huge head start based on Fitz's lack of attention to the base runner, it makes Narvaez look like a doofus too. And like, yes, technically he did make himself look like a doofus, and he gets doofus points for that too. But like, it's an operational thing, right? And that's, I think, the bigger issue. And I think that's the sort of thing that you can tie in to a lot of other stuff that has happened with this team that isn't necessarily, dumping on the catchers. It's just the catcher's turn right now. Like, that's where we're at with this team and that's been the thing too with, when they're running train on the Rockies and the Reds and the Nats, like they were still making dumb plays from time to time. It was far from flawless. And you're seeing it the other night, like Jarren Duran truck sticking guys in the outfield. It's like one of these weird, peculiar, like that's not how you do it. Things happens seemingly every night. And like I said, this is just the catcher's turn right now. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's like Cora gets some of the blame for that. Sure. Bailey gets some of the blame for that when it's talking about Fitz. Veritek, what do you do? And then like, then it's the way that and this is a much deeper discussion that we've kind of touched on before, is what are you being taught at the minor league level and how are you being coached and things like that. And like the Red Sox deserve some of the blame for that. But again, now it's my turn to be old man yelling at the clouds. Like, this is also kind of like a byproduct of the bigger thing with the sport as a whole before we even get into professional ball, that like you're probably not being taught stuff as, as diligently as you've been in the past, because it's more about like, how do we increase your spin rate? How do we, change your exit velocity and your launch angle, as opposed to like, can you check runners while you're going from the windup with a guy who's got 60 speed? You know what I mean? So that was a long rant about it, but I think it's more of just a big picture reflection of this organization right now and how they play the game. So.
Yeah, I think. Sorry,
they're
Sean.
not the only ones, or they
right.
like it is largely them. Like, I don't think a lot of teams make these mistakes. That's why I think they deserve some scoring for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reaction from like Walker Buehler, Narvaez, a whole bunch of people afterwards, they were, well, what are we supposed to do in those situations? It was like, well, if you're the pitcher, you step off. Like, to your point, like you look, if you're the catcher, you stay behind the plate until the pitch is delivered. It's like, what do you mean? Like, oh, I don't know what we're supposed to do in that situation. Like, you should know what to do in that situation.
Yeah.
Like the Harper, like I'm guessing, I haven't actually watched like a view that shows his lead or anything. I'm guessing he had more than a regular lead, and that's something where it's simple as like you're standing on the rubber. It's literally a look to your right. It's like, oh, he's farther off than he usually is. Let me just step off, and then we'll re-engage. And maybe that's part of. Maybe there's like a market inefficiency there because of the new rules. It's like you can kind of dance a little bit more if a guy's going to go from the windup with the guy on third base. But if that's the case, then just go from the stretch as a rule. Like, I don't know, make an adjustment. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, Ben, to your point too about like what the player said, I think it was Cora. It must have been after the second one when he was talking about like losing, essentially losing games on that sort of stuff, like back to back, and saying how like, he's never been a part of that and like all that sort of thing. And I feel like that kind of almost feeds into like it all as well. Like his reaction and his temperament is different anyway. It's more relaxed. But I think just like him, instead of saying something like, yeah, we have to be better or we can't do that again or something like that, it's more like, I've never had this happen to me. And I feel like it's not the best response to it either.
There's a little bit of like the hot dog, I think you should leave meme, where it's like we're trying to find the guy who did this. It's like, yeah, man, you're the boss. Like,
Yeah. So my kind of second related catcher thing is something that's been developing over a few weeks. So Carlos Narvaez is one of the bright spots of the season, like absolutely. If you're ranking like the least amount of problem on this team, he is one of those. Like, he's the answer. I was, though, someone was ranting at me earlier this week about their catching situation, and she was just up and down cussing Connor Wong, saying, "Get rid of this guy, trade him, whatever." And he's had an absolutely useless season. Like it's without a doubt. I just want to hold up a little bit on Narvaez. There's a reason the Yankees were okay moving him within the division. And we haven't seen a lot of it yet, but we have seen some stuff. We've obviously seen a lot of catcher's interferences. The ones over the last couple of days were very noticeable, but he has, I think, had 5 this season. There have been at least 2 instances this year where he gave up strikes directly down the middle because he popped up too quick to throw out a runner. It's like he came out of his crouch immediately. The ball was right down the pipe and blocked the umpire's view, and it led to balls. And, OB, I think, a couple times was like, "How do you miss that?" And I was like, "Well, because there's a human in his way." So I do think he's the kind of the catcher of the future. It's not unheard of, though, for anyone to have 4 good months in the major leagues. And he did homer this week, obviously contributed to a win. But I was kind of, in talking to this person, I was saying, well, at the end of the day, though, Connor Wong was an average major leaguer for multiple seasons. And so far, Carlos Narvaez has been a good major leaguer for half a season. So I'm not ready to punt one and say that the other one is the next Johnny Bench quite yet. I think that the luxury of this season is they can obviously roll with Narvaez as long as possible because he's not going to be the difference between them winning a World Series or not. But I do think that Narvaez is he's likely not Cal Raleigh, and I do think that Connor Wong long term is not this Connor Wong. I was trying to think of a really shitty catcher, but I couldn't think of a shittier catcher than 2025 Connor Wong.
Got 1 goddamn RBI. You almost pulled a Shaughnessy there. Called him Colton Wong.
Yeah,
huh? Every Wong the same to you. 2 things. We just spent like a good deal of time ripping on Narvaez. Like he's like more or less won them the game on Wednesday night. Yeah. So I will give him that credit. Like he threw out a guy in the 10th, and then
he's been arguably their best everyday player. I mean,
So I guess the question. I think you make an interesting point about the Yankees thing, and it's like they clearly knew something. Well, it's like, is he a moron? Is Carlos Narvaez brain dead? Is he incapable of learning? Because like, this is fixable stuff. It should be. This kind of ties into the other stuff. It's like, is anyone coaching? Like, and I know they are. Like, I'm being a little bit simplistic, but like, you got Jason Varitek in the dugout. Like, and again, it's the first year. This is his first like really big extended taste of big league baseball, and I think it's gone very well. And I think it is a net positive. I think he's going to be a good player at a premium position for them for a handful of years. And if you can kind of sand down the things on the edges, you're going to be in a really good spot, especially for what you gave up for him and how you got him. But like, yeah, you kind of have to do it at some point. And I think the Wong thing is, excuse me, a good like cautionary tale. Like if we had this conversation 2 or 3 years ago, it'd be like, oh, that Connor Wong kid, look, super athletic, hits the ball pretty well, handles himself behind the dish, can go play first base in the pinch. Like there's value there. Now it's like, let's just shoot this guy to the moon as soon as you find somebody who can, squat for 9 innings and catch a ball and throw it back to the pitcher. So, yeah, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. But like that's on them then. So it's like when you get a full off season with him, like get this stuff squared away. Yeah. Like, there's no excuse. I will deal with it this year because the bat's been so good and it's come from nowhere and it's actually given you a piece of a core moving forward. And that's on the whole passing grades for them and him regarding his situation for 2025. If we're having the same conversation next year about him, getting in the way of an umpire, not being able to frame doesn't know the rules, can't control the running game, then that's an issue. But I'll give him a little bit of lenience going into the offseason this year.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Given given how poor other parts and places and things have been, I can't put much emphasis in or much stock into him at this point. I agree with you in terms of I think he's going to be a good player for the future too, and I do think like the offseason, as you mentioned, that should be good for him, and he's been good. He's been very good, and there are other players and other pieces of the team that have not. So I just can't put a ton of stock into that yet.
It's just interesting. He's been the player, or he was the player of the Phillies series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
For better and for worse, he was the player of the series.
He was 1 and 2.
Yeah, actually, his numbers aren't that great. He's a 3-win player this year, huh?
Yeah, I mean he's a catcher, and he was.
I know, yeah. But a guy's like
yeah.
OPS plus is like 115. Like it's being overstated a little bit. But like, that's a 3-win catcher. You'll take that every day and twice on Sunday, especially for what you're paying him. So.
Absolutely. And so my thing is like, can he hit well enough long term to be a Wilson Contreras if he ends up not being able to catch? You know what I mean? Or can he get good enough defensively that he's not Salvador Perez, but like someone who can at least catch competently enough that like his bat has to be in the lineup.
Can it be Johnny Bench? That's all we're asking. I mean,
I was just trying to think of a catcher.
Johnny Bench
like,
is a very good baseball player, Sean. In case you didn't know.
Johnny Bench, infamously, was
the
last player to have a walk-off catcher's interference. So
there you go. The cast is die, or the die is cast, whatever.
The cast
mold
has
is
died.
set.
The cast has died.
The cast is dead.
We have killed the cast. All right. All right, let's turn to the Patriots now. Training camp has opened in earnest. We had a couple boots on the ground there on opening day. Let's start with Sean about your Patriots training camp experience.
In terms of yesterday, in terms of
just about what you saw compared to previous years under Mayo and Belichick.
Yeah, I think the Stephon Diggs stuff has to be the main storyline. It's certainly the biggest thing to me. I think Drake May looked comfortable. I think he looked good. But I just to have Stephon Diggs come out and be, he wasn't listed on NFI, he wasn't listed on PUP. Vrabel said he was going to be, there's no limitations. And like you hear that, and that was on Tuesday when Vrabel said that stuff. And you hear that, and it's like, all right, yeah, but let's actually see him on the field. Let's see, like, how much he's actually, run through drills. Let's see how much he's competing in 11 on 11s, competitive to and touch 11 on 11s at this point. But yeah, I was kind of surprised, stunned, maybe. It did not look like he had any limitations. He went through everything. He was certainly a contributor in, there's only 2 periods of 11 on 11s yesterday, but definitely a contributor in that. I think he had a pair of catches. The first catch that he had, it was the first play of Drake May's first pass, and definitely a roar from the crowd, I would say. When Diggs ran out to the field, he had a pretty decent ovation as well. And then I think, that first pass and that first reception was the same thing. And I just think, like, because of him, the offense has a different ceiling. And I think fans are, pretty excited about that and kind of see that. So I think that has to be, my main takeaway of the day.
Diggs looked fine. I didn't watch a ton. I was more, trying to get a Dunkin' Donuts bucket hat and watching my kid go through the obstacle course. And when we finally did sit down, like, we were blocked by a scoreboard. So, but yeah, Diggs, this is one thing I actually give football reporters respect for. They're either very good at faking their own knowledge, which I think is maybe the more likely thing, or they just know. And it's like, if you had told me like Steph Diggs was running 72% on Tuesday or whatever, Wednesday, yesterday, I'd be like, yeah. Or if you told me he's like 100%, I'd be like, yeah, that looks. I don't know the difference. Like, I don't know how crisp his routes are being run. Like, I don't know that shit. I'm not gonna pretend to either. Like, that's just. I think there's a lot of people. This is a media discussion. Is like, they have no idea what they're looking at, and they just say things that sound smart. And it's like, all right, yeah, I guess Steph Diggs is back to go. And then it's like, you ask the coach afterwards, and he says, yeah, he looked good. It's like, well, I was right. All right, cool, let's go. Yeah. So other than that, like, I mean, the offensive line, I guess, was maybe a bit of an issue, but it's day one. Like, who?
Yeah, yeah,
You know what? One takeaway: Josh Dobbs stinks. They
thanks.
better keep
Yeah,
Drake May healthy. I know I'm only
yeah,
going off of like 7 passes, but Jesus Christ, the guy needed a compass. Like, could
yeah,
not find it. The one pass that he did complete for like 25 yards was because I think it was like Kendrick Bourne went up in between like 2 receivers, pulled it down to the point where like Kendrick Bourne was doing a jig on the sideline because he was
yeah,
so happy to make the catch. Like, the pastronaut looked like he was drifting into a different galaxy. It was
yeah.
bad news. So they like that's all right. That's my takeaway. Is offensive line is of paramount importance because if Drake May gets hurt, this thing is cooked. It doesn't matter who's playing receiver; they are screwed.
And to that point, like I think some of the conversations during the offseason was like, why would you choose Josh Dobbs over Jacoby Brissett? And I don't know if Jacoby Brissett was like, gonna sign up to be the backup, like for sure behind Drake May. But if they chose Josh Dobbs over Jacoby Brissett and Jacoby Brissett would have came here, I think that looks terrible after day one.
What do you mean? If
After yesterday's performance, I think that was not the right decision.
the more I think about it, though, like there's no way Brissett wanted to be here, right? I don't.
Yeah, probably not.
Because like the way things played out last year, it wasn't like he was a primary part of that whole thing, and it's like he ended up losing his job, and it's like, well, so you come back knowing that like if you have any aspirations of starting, it's not happening here. Like Dobbs at least is a career backup.
He knows, yeah.
Yeah, and who has like flashed at times, but I think you start seeing extended looks at him, and that you get what you get. I think they're a better backup quarterback. I didn't mean to turn this into a conversation about the state of the backup quarterback, but like I think they were better options out there, and you could bring in somebody off the street even, and maybe kind of work them up that way too. Like, and if you trust your system, like that's one thing I will say about like the team I root for, the Packers. Like I think they do a pretty good job of like identifying guys who kind of stink as quarterbacks and bring them in and be like, you just need to learn our system and you'll be okay. Like what they did with Malik Willis last year was borderline miraculous. So like, yeah, again, I don't mean to. We don't need to go down, QB2 road on day 2 of training camp, but it was not an impressive showing, that's for sure.
This is the portion of the program where I realize I forgot to bring my water in here, so now I'm getting a little parched. So how
we'll
about
talk about the QB2 if you want to keep, if you want to go fill up.
No, that's my appetite or whatever. It goes away when we're talking about Josh Dobbs. So how about operationally though? Because oh man, Jesus, wow, that is
sweet nectar.
That is like a bat flip. Where was I? Oh yeah. So I mean, how about operationally? Because I just watching the Forge and Foxborough show. I know that is Patriots propaganda. But one thing I have been impressed with is it seems to be a smooth operation. And it's probably just the contrast of last year. But seeing the footage of people in coaches meetings where they're actually having substantive conversations, and I think that hearing that goes a lot further to engendering confidence than the kind of the Gerard Mayo approach, which was kind of the rah sort of confidence building, and then when it comes to the nuts and bolts, there's kind of like nothing there. And that just might be, me taking my personal preference for how I like to, like, what I like to hear from leaders. I like to feel like, how do we do this thing? Not just like, we're going to do this, it's going to be amazing. But I just think that, like, when they got into that, they showed that meeting and they were talking about, I think it was a specific wide receiver. They didn't, but like they were talking about how they could improve his route, so that would be there later in the year. And kind of like Marone and McDaniels are talking about this and that. And, Vrabel's, inserting his idea that, like, I think at one point he's like, yeah, we like can we do such and such? And they're like, yeah, totally, we can do it. And like, it just, like I said before, I'm huge on just competence, and it seems like such a competent operation now that whether the coach's job is just to put the players in the position, and if they succeed or fail, it's kind of the players' fault. And are the players good enough this season for that to be like a championship contending? No, I don't think so. But like, at least they're in a position now that like, if they suck, they suck because they suck, and it's not like, you know, Kyle Duggar or whoever. It's like, you don't know whether last year did he suck or was he just put in the position to suck repeatedly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a better product to watch because of that, and I think it's just all, you know, pretty much strictly based on coaching at this point. And a lot of the stuff that Vrabel has said early, like he talked about like the 3 objectives or something for a successful training camp, and it's like ground level, like build a team, like it's the basics, and I think that tells you he knows where they're at, and you know they need to do these things, and we're not worried about, you know, the stuff that comes down the line. And I just think it's like a very realist, and I don't know, I think it's a good approach. I think it's like a very realist approach given, you know, so much turnover, and given, you know, it's a young team, a lot of new faces obviously too. And I think all of that is like kind of what's going to breed competence for the team. And I don't think, I will say, I think the first 11-on-11 snap, there was an offsides on, it was a defensive end. But after that, you didn't see a lot of penalties during 11-on-11s yesterday. And, you know, that was certainly not the case last season. But yeah, so I think, to your point, Ben, like I think it's a much more competent coaching staff, and that's going to mean a much more competent team.
If you were to rank the penalties you'd be okay with taking on day one of training camp, and offsides from like the defensive end would rank near like the most acceptable. It's like, well, at least that guy he's just too excited to go to work. Like, we can work with that. Like, that's sick, man. Like, I love your energy. Like, just don't do it again. I think I've made this point before, but like, this is like one of the surest signs that I'm getting older is that I absolutely love talking about this shit, because it's like, you know, you can whatever, like, freak athletes are freak athletes. I can't really relate to that, but I can kind of relate to some of this type of stuff. Not in a way that anything comes close to like running a football team, but just I think there are translatable things. I also think there's a very interesting power dynamic among the 3 of us from our past days going on here, where it's like, you know, the head coach tells the coordinator, tells the player type of deal. But I actually do think that that's an interesting point to make here, is that Gerard Mayo was woefully inept and unprepared to do this job. Both clearly from like the stuff that we saw on a day-to-day, whether it's media, whether it's in-game coaching, whether it's getting his team ready, whatever. But I think just as important is that he did a horrible job of building a coaching staff around him. And perhaps he was saddled with some various things, whether it's, you know, the Van Pelt stuff, and, you know, the crafts and the football ops probably didn't do him, the greatest of favors. But like, I love Vrabel's ability to not deflect, but to defer. And, you know, if we're going to assume that he wasn't forced on McDaniels wasn't forced on him, the ability to go, I'm comfortable in my own shoes. I'm hiring this guy to bring along my rookie or my second year quarterback the way that he has in other places, or has helped shepherd Tom Brady. That takes a level of selflessness. Same thing with Marone. Like, he's brought in a lot of former head coaches who have big egos, who probably have greater aspirations than being assistants, under Mike Vrabel. But he says, I'm comfortable not knowing what I don't know. And I'm going to bring in guys who are going to be respected and can do their jobs on they are dependable. They've done it in other places, and they can connect with players. And like, I was gonna make one other point with that, and I've kind of forgotten what it is, but like, it's just, I think being able to build that out, the 3 things thing too, Sean, like, I thought it was a very interesting quote, not because of the 3 things, those are whatever.
Are you talking about the things that are good, things that are bad, and things that get you beat? Or are you talking about?
No, it's what was it, Sean? This was the one where he got on the reporters for not knowing the.
Yeah, Ben, that was I forgot about that. The good, the bad, and the shit that'll get you beat was the one you're thinking of, Ben. That was a good quote too. This was about him talking about objectives, and the first objective is that simply they want to build a team. The second objective is that they want players to earn a role, and the third objective is we have to prepare to win. And so he said that on Tuesday, and then someone asked him yesterday, what would you do? Like, how would you define a successful training camp? And he said, those three objectives. And to Mike's point, like, he's like, do you remember what they were? And the media couldn't remember. And it was kind of a funny interaction.
That's kind of the point though. Like, those are so nondescript. There's no real like value or information to be gleaned from that, but it's just like, it's the definition of keep it simple, stupid, right? And it's like, if we do these things, especially starting from where we're starting, we are going to get better. Like, I've been around, this is me saying from his perspective, I've been around enough professional football in my life, and even college, like with Ohio State. Like, if we do these things, we have no choice but to get better. And I feel confident enough in my ability to coach you up, and the people around me can coach you up, and we'll figure out the little stuff. But if we are just striving for these three big picture things, there's no way we don't get better. It is kind of a little bit like do your job type of simplicity, but it's like the tip of the iceberg, and underneath is where all the good stuff is. So I like that. Like, it's just, I think he's like the best quality is like, not, this is probably overstating a little bit, but like Belichick and Mayo, where it's like, I think he's organized. I think he knows the game well, on level with Belichick, and I think he is personable and affable in a way that Mayo strived to be and maybe kind of even fell short. But like, you'll see him running around the practice fields. He's coaching guys up. Like, I think he brings a lot of, I mean, there's a reason why he's one of the, considered one of the best coaches in the NFL. So I like that it's a beneficial spot where he comes in because the expectations are so low, and like he can only bring it up. But I think the types of things that he's done so far just are going to go so far in raising the floor.
I think in the long term, it's going to be hard for me to remain unbiased with Vrabel because he reminds me so much of Bill Parcells. And I love Bill Parcells. Like, I anytime I ever see a video or anything of Bill Parcells talking, I drop what I'm doing because I could just listen to the guy talk about whatever. He's one of the most
like a
entertaining.
Politically correct Bill Parcells.
What's that?
He's like a politically correct Bill Parcells.
Like it's really it's incredible. So the ability to, like, he knows what he's talking about, but he also has the ability to kind of like make kind of the simplest message, kind of, Sean, to what you were saying. Like, it's almost like he could have the same message to a 10-year-old in Pop Warner as he does to a 25-year-old on the practice field. And then also very similar to Parcells, which is not something that I can remember seeing in New England since Parcells, definitely not with Carroll, definitely not with Belichick, definitely not with Mayo, is his ability to rib the media and like kind of go back and forth with the media, and then like the next day it's like whatever, and like almost that like he expects them to give it back to him. Like, that's what Parcells would give little comments here, and he would expect them to come back and give him little comments back. And it wasn't like, I feel like if no one ever dared do that with Mayo, because I think there was an understanding that Mayo did not have the ego and like he didn't have the comfort with his like to take that kind of ball busting and understand that it's within the fun of the thing. Like, Vrabel understands that like he can kind of give them, they can come that, and it's like, and that is where like I go like, wow, this guy goes from like having some Parcells similarities to like legitimately being like a Parcells like recreation.
Yeah, and Ben, I don't know if you want to like get into like the exact conversation that we're thinking of.
Go for it.
You want to do that right now?
Yeah, go for it.
So essentially, the conversation was on Tuesday. Vrabel was asked one question. The first question was from Tom Curran, and the question was something about how Vrabel said in the past. Oh shoot, what was the question? How Vrabel said in the past that he essentially, building off the offseason and all that sort of thing. And it was like a very specific, like, you said this beforehand, like, do you see this, playing out now that we're here and that training camp's here and the offseason's behind you? And Vrabel gave a great answer, extensive answer, a few minutes. He said it was 5 minutes. I don't know if it was 5, but
it was not.
It was extensive. It was extensive. And it was like 2 or 3 questions later that Vrabel gets asked the exact same question in the exact same way, saying like, quote, like, yes, you said this, before it was about the most important 5 weeks of the offseason. And, do you see, now that the 5 weeks are over, do you see that, players came back and, they're in good shape or whatever? And it was almost word for word the same question. And Vrabel let the question play out. It was from Ben Volen, Boston Globe. And Vrabel let the question play out and just kind of like sighed. And he's like, well, if you were in a coma, like, I don't know if you were in a coma or if you were tweeting on your
Oh,
phone or if you were
you're playing with your
texting
phone, yeah.
or if you were texting. But he's like, I
Yeah.
just spent 5 minutes answering this exact same question. And he goes on, he gave a decent answer. He also joked how like he thought he was getting punked when he was asked the question a second time, which I thought was great as well. But it just like to what you were talking about, like that ribbing was just really good. And it was a banter, but it was also it showed you behind the scenes. Like if players aren't on their shit, like this is how the meetings look. Like they're getting called out for not being on their P's and Q's, and Vrabel expects that from the media. And I just thought like that was like a perfect encapsulation of a few different things.
We saw that in the leaked video with the of him addressing the team where he's like calling
Yeah,
on people
yeah,
randomly, and yeah, so he's uh I just looked it up on the Patriots media site. I couldn't they pulled all the like the punked thing. I thought again, you don't get very popular defending Ben Volen, but I thought they like local media outlets did him a little dirty by not including like Vrabel did kind of be like it's not the end of the world type of the
yeah, yeah,
what some
yeah,
of the stuff
yeah.
he said.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I agree with like Ben's point, like about him being able to bust balls in a way that like that's maybe his love language, which is very relatable for somebody like me. Like people probably think I'm an asshole, but it's like that means I like you, and I think he might have that. If I can make fun of you, it means I like you. So I think he's in a similar way, but like he's not like he can communicate. Like he's a good
Yeah.
communicator, and like
Yeah.
I think that's a sign of good communication. Whereas like Belichick was just an asshole because he didn't know how to communicate in a in a way that like adult males of his age should be able to communicate, and like that manifested itself in a very uncomfortable way for 25 years. But like I think there's a way that Vrabel does it that is dry and witty and sarcastic, and
Yeah.
like I think you like yeah, Volan probably felt like a dipshit for 10 minutes, but at the same time, like, hey, this is the expectation. Like, you be on my level, dude. Like, we're here. Like, we're at work. Like, let's go. And I kind of like that because I think if you're able to keep that energy when you're doing something as mundane as meeting with a bunch of reporters, that you're gonna keep it on the field. Like, so I think it's another thing too. It's like a brand. It's a personal brand. Like, I'm what you see is what you get. I'm not changing for you. I'm not changing for my players. I'm not changing for my wife. Like, this is what I am. And I think that is a way that to have sustained success as a leader and a communicator. Not to get too broad, but
Yeah. And since Sean mentioned his name, I do want to add nothing against Ben Volen. I mean, obviously, he does a great job. His name's Ben. Card carrying member of the Boston Ben Sports Media Association.
I can't
never mind. I'm
remember
not
a
going to say
press
that
conference.
acronym.
Yeah, I can't remember a press conference. I spent like even like the biggest like coaches fired. Like nobody has ever just sat there and paid attention to every single word that's been said. So it's very easy for that to happen. I almost respect the confidence to be like, there's no way anybody's asked this. I'm gonna ask.
Well, and also
verbatim.
And also like I make sure to read Volan. I mean, sometimes it can be a little harsh. But I do think he does a good job of when a lot of the beat is zigging in one direction, he does a great job of zagging. So I do think that is valuable when you can't get in kind of like a beat writer echo chamber. So I will give him that. And also like the person that I've seen Vrabel rib the most so far is Karen Garagian, and he loves Karen. You know what I mean? Like every single question she asks, he says some sort of like, snide comment. And to your point though, it's like he does that to the person on the media he likes the most. So it's obviously it's not. I know people on social media or whatever might be like, oh, he's really putting him in their place. Telling those. He's not. I don't think doing it out of spite. It's something where he's like, hey guys, like we're here. We got to talk every day. Let's at least try to have a little bit of fun with this.
And if you want to give him too much credit, there's almost something admirable about doing it with Karen, right? Like she's a woman, and I'm going to treat her the same exact that I treat everybody else. If anything, I'm propping her up because I like her more than you guys. So, like, there's, I don't want to get too carried away with what kind of statements Mike Vrabel's trying to make by how he banters with relatively nondescript media members. But I like Vrabel.
Susan
what
B.
can I
Anthony,
say?
Mike Vrabel,
clear, yeah.
giants of the feminist movement.
Yeah. I am what I am.
What else you got, Sean? Any other non-Vrabel related training camp thoughts? That sounds like a no. All right.
I would say, I mean, in doing, just because I have this in the frame of my mind now after doing it for Nesson, the 3 studs, 3 duds. I had Kyle Williams in my mind as a stud, and he had play of the day. It was against Christian Gonzalez, and I just think
this is the shit I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I'm not saying that I guess it's a slight detour, but we do this every goddamn year with every team. It's not just the Patriots. It's not just you. It's not just the Boston media, but it's like one day all of us, because I get it. Especially if you're a verified Twitter user, Savage Sports takes you and runs wild, and all of a sudden it gets all over the place. But it's like, let's cool it on rookies. It's just.
Well, what I was gonna say,
especially rookie receivers for the Patriots, it's like we've done this a billion times.
In a little bit of a different direction, and say that he was really he had the play of the day, and the 2 rookies from last year, so not rookies, they're now second-year players.
Yes, that's how it works.
Those 2 receivers, Jalen Polk wasn't there, and Javon Baker did nothing. So I just think after day 1, it is very clear that he is, has the advantage over those guys. And not that the roster decision battle was never going to come down to Kyle Williams against those guys, because Kyle Williams was drafted this year with Vrabel and those guys weren't. So that was a very obvious, Kyle Williams was going to win that battle. But I do think there's already day 1, there's already a little bit of separation.
In your defense too, I will say it goes the other way too. I heard Felger and Maz trying to badger Greg Bedard into saying that Will Campbell's arms were too short after day 1. So it goes both ways. It's not just overhyping it. It's tearing guys down too. So
yeah,
it's the content world, baby.
That's how it goes.
So Sean, you have had the pleasure of now covering training camp under Vrabel, Mayo, and Belichick, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
So for behind the keyboard, I wanted to get into, it's funny, Mike was mentioning the stuff that he finds fascinating about football now. I think training camp is the most interesting time of the NFL season for me personally, because I like seeing how things are put together and how things are coming together. The games are obviously fun. You sit on your couch on a Sunday afternoon, but I've not always I've come to find training camp really fascinating. So just kind of curious to get your impressions on what it's like to cover a training camp, and then kind of some comparisons and contrasts between what you've perceived between the 3 different last Patriots coaches.
Yeah, in terms of what it's like to cover it, I agree. I think it's fascinating. I think it's fun to cover. I mean, from a very simplistic point of view, it's more of a 9 to 5 sort of day as opposed to working nights. So that's really nice. But I think when I was with the newspaper that I used to work for, it was a lot. My job was a lot different. It just was I was producing, one sidebar story, which was essentially all quotes from players afterwards, and then also a notebook, which was a few different things. And then kind of as things have changed, those stories were different. Some of them were more observation based, and that not to say I wasn't paying attention when I was writing the other stories, but I think when you're writing something more observation based, it's for the people that aren't there observing. So you kind of have to, pay closer attention and observe and, get those plays of the day and, who's lining up with who and, some of those things. And so I think like that's a really interesting part of training camp too. Like, and I know, the stats that are kept in training camp. I mean, there's, reporters at the end of the month will have Drake May went 120 of 154 and competitive 11 on 11s, and I think to some extent like those numbers should be taken with a grain of salt. But I also think like from a fan perspective, I think fans eat that stuff up, and they want to know for better or worse, whether if Drake May had 4 interceptions against the first team defense or that sort of thing. So I think it's like it is a very interesting take, both from a media perspective, and I think it's a fun take for fans as well. So and I think that answers the first part of the question, and the second part of the question in terms of like the difference between the Belichick and Mayo and Vrabel. I would say I think yesterday it's maybe a little unfair just because it is only one day. But I thought the fan turnout yesterday was really good. I thought the bleachers were crowded. Um, and I think, it was a Wednesday. So it's a Wednesday. There's no pads on yet. It's essentially a glorified two-hand touch. And I think, when pads come on, I think fans are more enticed to go. I think obviously weekends when it's easier for fans to be there, there'll be more fans there. But I thought yesterday it was a pretty good turnout, and I certainly think it was better than last year's turnout. Again, I don't know what the average was for last year with Mayo, but it just seemed like it was more full. It did seem like fans were more excited. I actually wrote a story for a newspaper, and that was talking with fans about their excitement and optimism going into the season, and a lot of them are high. A lot of them have maybe cautious optimism, but optimism nonetheless. And I think dating back to the Belichick too, obviously that optimism was there when he was there. Maybe not so much in the later, the 2022, 2023, maybe not so much then. But I don't think it was as optimistic last year with Maya. So I don't know if that answers the second part of the question as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I went last year on a Sunday, and there was plenty of seats available. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I've heard that on like the radio, particularly on like Felger and Maz, is like training camp attendance is like a reflection of how people feel about the team. It's like I don't have any expectations. I don't care. I have a 4-year-old, and it was a beautiful day in the summer, and like you know what I mean. Like people just do stuff to do stuff. Like it was a good crowd. I don't think it's gonna be nearly as big the rest of the week because it's supposed to get hotter than hell, and it's like. And then I think it's easy to justify the first day. But maybe there is a little more renewed optimism with Vrabel, and it is interesting that there wasn't as much last year because like Drake May probably would have been worth being like, let's go see what Drake May looks like even on day one. But I think that stuff's probably a little bit overstated. But like, and I also think you're never gonna get back to like rope break, where it's people line up at the under the tunnel and like run in to get a bleacher spot. So it was traffic was terrible. I know that was a tough scene. So Foxborough's still not the easiest place to get to, but it is kind of interesting to like step back and think about where this franchise is now versus where it's been in the past. Like even just walking around over there, it's like it's it's so weird. Like it you can lose that mystique real fast. Like we went into the pro shop, and like one of the Super Bowl banners is hanging in the middle of the pro shop, and it's a truly awesome sight. Like to see just how big it is. Like it's like, and you're like, oh yeah, that's from a Super Bowl. Like they won a Super Bowl, and now it's like, have you seen the lighthouse? Do you want to go up and see Boston? And it's like you can get away from like football is the thing real fast. And I understand that like that's the natural direction of business, but like, it does for me at least as an outsider, a relative outsider, somebody who hasn't really covered the team. I don't like the team. it does feel like there's been an obvious and understandable transition. Like and I hope they're good because like you almost forget what it's like to get excited for like Wednesday was an event back when Brady and Belichick were here, and like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like just the press conference day was like there'd be 200 people down at Gillette, and I don't know if they ever get back to that just because it almost transcended the NFL, but it would be nice to kind of get that buzz back around here. It's like that's the thing is like there was a lot of people there yesterday. I don't think like the buzz is comparable yet, and that's understandable. Like it's gonna take a while. Like and they might not even be that good this year either. So that's keep kicking that can.
So Sean, this is going to reveal how long it's been since I covered training camp. Is it still
talking to Bruce Armstrong at the
not far off? Is it still like the first thing you do is you get there and everybody gets out their binoculars and is like writing down like what numbers are out on the field? It's like a team. Is that still like the team effort? I always thought it was very what's the word? There's a lot of like camaraderie there because you got
the attendance. Yeah, I would say it's one of the first. So one of the first, I think the first thing is, and it's not every day actually, but like yesterday, the first day, and then so Vrabel will speak before practice, and he'll speak. I think it's pretty much every other day. And so like the first thing is usually he'll speak about, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes before practice is scheduled to start. So that's about whatever 9:30. And so that's the first thing. You kind of go there, have that press conference, and then. But it is kind of funny how, that press conference quickly leads into like, binoculars and attendance and, scratching off players' names that are there. And, do you have 34 in blue? Do you have 32 in what? Like all that sort of thing. So that is definitely still a thing. And it is kind of funny to see like, everyone tries to do it themselves, but there certainly are groups of people that are working together at the same time.
I love that. Like we live in an era where I could like talk to someone in Antarctica. You know what I mean? Like with the technology that we have. And it's just we're still doing binoculars and notepads on a hill in Foxborough.
Yep.
And I especially love it because like there's a way that the team could probably like do it electronically. They just don't and make the media members. But I also think like the media members, if it was just provided to them, like I think you guys would be kind of disappointed. Like I think there's part of you guys that like the gameplay loop of going out there each day and everybody pulling out like trying to like is that 58 or 59? Like I don't know. Tommy, what do you got over there? I don't know.
It was like Jeff Howe like go back to his or his practice logs from like 6 years ago to be like Mac Jones was 14 of 16 on that day, and so May actually had a better day than it's just it's like beautiful mind stuff.
There was one funny
or Rain Man with Sean.
During attendance taking, there was kind of one funny one is Mac Hollins he was out there, he was in the jersey, he had a red sweatshirt under his jersey, but his jersey was on, but he was barefoot. So we were debating between like, well, he has his jersey on, so is he actually off, the list, or
who was
is
the first one to tweet
not?
it?
I can't remember.
Oh, see, that's important.
I was talking to someone about it, and I said, I'm like, buddies, because that person didn't see that he was barefoot. They're like, oh, so he must be off the list. I'm like, well, he's not wearing shoes. So how does what's going to win out here? Essentially, does the jersey win out or does the shoes win out? And he wasn't a participant. So
yeah, you know what? That's a good point because it says no shirt, no shoes, no service. Are those things exclusive? Right. So if you're missing one of the two, is there no service, or are you missing both of them?
Doesn't that change with Mac Hollins because the guy never wears shoes? So isn't that inconclusive evidence? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, man, it's Wednesday. He's not wearing shoes. I don't know.
He doesn't. But he did have shoes on before the end of the practice. Like he was wearing cleats, but he also wasn't.
This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Mac Hollins shoe watch. That is, I think there'd be a now we're just whatever, but like I've always thought this, like if I got back on a beat, I would, and I probably wouldn't last long because I don't think it would probably get as much traction, but I would just go in there like trying to do something completely different in like the silliest way possible, and it's just like a commentary of like I guess like the first thing I think of is like how many Aaron Hernandez jerseys can I find today? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm gonna tweet about. And like eventually you just get lapped by everybody. You're like, oh, well, is there anything I'm going on the football field? It's like I don't know, man. Like I'm gonna go hang out with the puppies at like the adoption shelter that they brought over today. Like that's what I think. There's somebody could make a could break through with some sort of commentary on the whole entire operation as well, but.
You have an Aaron Hernandez jersey on. What do you know about him?
Like I talked to the here I am, Dateline Foxborough. I talked to the Kona Ice guy today, and these are the most popular flavors. What does that tell us about? That's my log is like, oh wow, last year orange was the #1 selling flavor on the opening day of training camp, and this year it's blueberry. What does that tell us? So.
Training camp does lend itself to that, and I do like it's kind of like a little spring training vibe. Because it's just there's very important things going on for some people, maybe like 15, 20 guys. It determines their future, but for the rest of the people, a lot of it's just like, hey, we got to get here and work out for a bit. But that's why I think it's among the dwindling number of things in sports that I think are still like good and accessible. Like I love that it's still free. Some teams charge for it, which I think is the dumbest thing in the world, to charge to watch people go practice. But like it's such a valuable thing, and even like my youngest daughter, who does not like sports at all, like you mentioned the training camp was going on. She's like, "Oh, are we gonna go this year?" I was like, "You want to go?" She was like, "Yeah, I like going to through the obstacle course, and like I like that kind of stuff."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
I feel effective. I feel like you're kind of teeing me up inadvertently or not, to the point I was making earlier. Like, so we brought our 4.5-year-old, and like he's not totally into sports yet. He likes his baseball cards. He plays soccer in the backyard, but that's kind of where it ends. He knows stuff. Like he knows what the sports are. He knows who they are and whatever. But like he hasn't formed any real opinions about it yet. And we took him down there, and it's like it's pretty remarkable to that point. Like, it doesn't cost anything. I was almost like, wait, it's gonna cost like $10 to park or something. Like it doesn't cost anything for parking. You walk in and it's like, they have these games set up. Just throw the ball, and then you get to walk over to the table and pick out a piece of like Patriots swag. So within like 5 minutes of being there, he's walking around with a Patriots pennant. And so like at one point we sit down in the grass, and like I didn't even know where, like I didn't know he had this in him, but like one of the pass gets completed. People starts clapping, and he holds up the pennant like he's waving it, and it's like he's being like, he's turning into a Patriots fan like, right before my eyes.
Yeah.
And like you just think about like, and again, this isn't, I was saying earlier, like this is nothing groundbreaking. I know that this is how marketing works, but like he's one of 1,000 4-year-olds there yesterday who went through the same process, and it's like that's a very important thing to organizations to like build that, especially for a team like this where like my kid might grow up not knowing what the Patriots being good is, just like I did. Like, so you got to find ways to get people in one way or another, and I think that's one of the super interesting things, and I think that's a wholesome thing. As as weird as that might sound, like it's good to still have that. I think it's important.
I do think it's a big part of why football has become like the behemoth that it is, because it is, from as much as it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's still the most accessible of the sports when you consider, where it's broadcast, the timing of the games, all those sorts of things.
Barrier entry is so low.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see what happens with like their upcoming like streaming rights deal and all those sorts of things, because I think that there has been a lot of short-sightedness when it comes to baseball and hockey and basketball. College sports is a huge one where like, now all their big games are broadcast at 9 p.m. And it's like, what young fan is going to get into that? Whereas football, like, everyone can turn on CBS. I shouldn't say everyone, first world problems. But, basically everyone can turn on CBS at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. If you have a car, you can drive down to Foxborough Stadium and sit in the stands and wave your little pennant. So there is real, like, long-term value to that. And now, at least for one more generation, in Teddy's case, that's going to survive.
And honestly, like even if you compare it to like baseball, like the apples to apples comparison is spring training. Like that's in Florida. It's
Yeah.
not even in
Yeah.
Massachusetts. So like, yeah, to be able, I think hockey is probably close too, where like especially locally, like it's pretty easy to go watch the Bruins training camp with the way Warrior is, and even with the way Restucia was. But yeah, like those, you have to take advantage of those opportunities, especially if your team isn't as good as maybe it once was. So,
Well, it's
yeah,
like the thing that like you have to pay extra, or either that or it's like a season ticket holder perk to get in for batting practice now for baseball games.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yes, the gates open. The gates open later for general admission than they used to, which I was like, that stinks. Like it used to be one
Yeah, I
of the
didn't know
best
that.
things to get there, 2 hours before the game, and you stand there, and it's now it's its own thing. Like it's almost just its own ticket, which like that's congratulations. Like
Which also is a
you've made
ripoff.
$15 baseball packs of baseball cards. Like it's already impossible to. Yeah, it's yeah.
Well, like on top of that, like that is like you're paying for something that's dying on its own. Like performance become so optimized that like I don't, the percentage of guys who hit on the field every
That's
day
true,
is
yeah.
much lower than it used to be. So because they're just gonna hit in the tunnel because
Yeah.
they're trying to.
Everybody's in
You
the
know.
hit tracks tunnel. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
When did that start, Ben? Do you know?
I don't know, but I remember getting a thing last season that it was like because I had like a mini package. It was like as a mini package, you can sign up for early batting practice admission, and I was like, I have to sign up for that. Like I can't just show up.
Huh.
And yeah. So
It's nothing better than watching, yeah, 1997 watching. Yeah. The thing is like even then it was tough to get in. Like it's always been tough. Like that's an interesting, you know, case study or whatever. Is like even back in the day, the Red Sox hit so early that you had to get there
yeah,
super
like 5
super
o'clock,
early
yeah.
to see the second half of the best guys hit in the first group. It felt like so like if you wanted to go watch Nomar take batting practice, you might get to see him take like 6 swings, and it's like Jeremy Burnett is coming out in a couple minutes to take BP for the Brewers, and it's like that's yeah. So
But
I didn't think we'd get down this road.
I never got there early enough to see the Red Sox do batting practice as a kid.
It's
I
hard,
was
yeah.
always I remember
Yeah,
always
and
getting
then,
there
yeah.
and like John Jaha is
John Jaha
for
yeah.
the Milwaukee Brewers or
Yep.
whoever is hitting.
You can watch Tim Wakefield warm up in the bullpen because he was almost certainly starting.
Yeah, Tim Wakefield probably started 75% of the games that I went to when I was.
I love people. Everybody says the same thing. Like it's some sort of like mysterious thing. It's like, well, the guy made 1,500 starts for the Red Sox, so it's just a math problem, right? Like more often than not, he was here for 36 years and pitched 20 games a year. Of course, he
Or we were
sucks.
just all at the same game.
Yeah, maybe there's that. Yeah, nothing's real.
Oh man. All right. Well, hey, Sean, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I will not be here next week. I will be in sunny Seattle. I'm actually gonna be checking out a Mariners game. Because Mariners, great uniforms, amazing uniforms. So I'm very excited for that. But when we do reconvene, we'll have a lot more Patriots to talk. We'll have a lot more Red Sox to talk for good or ill, depending on what happens at the trade deadline. But for Sean, for Mike, I've been Ben. This has been the NPC Sports Podcast. Thanks for joining us.